Prank: I left a little present on my girlfriend's face. Then I took her home right after. No, not that kind of present. Get your mind out of the gutter. During my college days a few decades back, my girlfriend and I were going steady and we would at a point to have our date night on Friday evenings and Saturday evenings. Being somewhat studious college kids, we were rather tired in the evenings. Our typical plans would be to get something to eat and then watch a movie at my place. Because streaming services did not exist at this time, I suppose you might call this VCR and chill. This particular evening, as we were watching some Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode, I glanced off to my left and noticed my girlfriend had dozed off. It was at this moment an idea popped into my mind. Indeed, the beginnings of an epic silly prank began to form. The picture at the beginning of this narrative is relevant for a particular reason. To wit, I happened to have a silly blue smiley face ink stamp laying about in the nearby vicinity. This is sometimes used by first grade teachers grading papers, and while I can't exactly recall where I had gotten it, I remember bringing it into work some months earlier and stamping it at the bottom of interoffice memos between two people who are arguing with one another. That was big fun, too. Anyway, when my girlfriend of that era would fall asleep, she would be positively passed out. Nothing could or would rouse her from her slumber short of an airliner striking the building, a T5 tornado, or an exploding water heater in the basement. Giant fissures might open in the ground underneath our feet as a result of a continent-shifting earthquake, and she would still be merrily dozing away in dreamland. Being the self-amused trickster that I am, I proceeded to retrieve said blue smiley face stamp, and then I stamped a good 6, 7, or 8 blue smiley faces directly onto her face as she was dozing. I did it as lightly as I could to prevent her from waking up and thereby spoiling the joke. Later on she woke up, the movie finished, and we eloped into the automobile for the 35-minute ride across town to her domicile. The time is now almost 1 a.m., and the ride was mostly silent as we are both quite exhausted. On the way to her place, I had to purposely not look at her directly for fear I would burst out laughing and she would figure out something is up. I pulled into her driveway, and I had to hold my guts to prevent myself from laughing out as I gave her a parting smooch. We bade each other a good morn, and she promptly entered into her household. My ride back home was uneventful. As I was winding down from my own repose circa 2 a.m., I hear the ringing of the telephone. As this was the era before caller ID, I had no idea who might be ringing at this extreme hour of the night, but I had a fair suspicion what was about to happen. I left the receiver to my ear and casually remarked, "Hello." The very first words out of her mouth were, "I saw what you did." "Did you think I wouldn't notice?" I burst out laughing, because of course I did. I was hoping she would have gone straight upstairs and fallen asleep in her bed immediately, thereby saving the hilarity for the next morning. Alas, this was not to be. Instead, she quickly went into the bathroom to wash up, turned on the lights, and immediately noticed something massively awry with multiple blue smiley faces stamped all over her face. As she related the story to me, she immediately ran out and loudly announced to her father, "Look what he did to me." He glanced up from his late-night television show and immediately burst out laughing, as he was a prankster of sorts in his day. As this was water-based ink, it quickly washed off with a bit of extensive scrubbing. Thus there was no semi-permanent damage where she would have to wait days before it might vanish. As it were, we bade each other again a good rest, parted ways on the phone, and settled into our respective slumbers. Thereafter she made it a point not to easily fall asleep in my vicinity again where a smiley face ink stamp was within my easy reach. I still think of the story with fond memories whenever I glance at the smiley stamp at the back of the desk drawer. Finis.